Chapter 37:13. She originally wanted to settle Xiao Yulu quickly. Then to help Azure Dragon settle that white-toothed monster. The array that was set up around the auction. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the dense yin qi coming from all directions. If they stayed in this array for a period of time, it would have a huge impact on them. There was a possibility that it might even weaken their powers, causing the yin qi to enter their bodies. In Nirvana Realm's Nether Palace's territory, when Yiqing Luo was sealed in the palace by the mastermind, her body was almost corroded by the Nether Palace's yin qi. If her willpower was weak, there was a possibility that she would become Nether Palace's puppet, controlled by them. What was even more unfortunate was that her body and mind were swallowed by the yin qi directly. Like Xiao Yulu. Obviously after the yin qi entered her body, she had lost her own rationality. But Xiao Yulu's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer as she fought. It really made Yiqing Luo shocked. Somehow, she seemed to have forgotten something. Just like she felt that Xiao Yulu's attacks looked as though she was trying her best to kill her. But Yiqing Luo had an ominous premonition in her heart. As though Nether Palace had specially made use of Xiao Yulu to delay her time. Wait a minute. Delay time. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. The expression on her face congealed. Her deep and enchanting eyes looked in the direction of the Azure Dragon in shock. Azure Dragon. Her throat was only able to spit out 2 words. But the scene in front of her silenced all her voices. Black qi filled the air, as though a thick fog had dyed the sky. That imitation white dragon monster, under Azure Dragon's tearing, its huge, dragon body, had already broken into pieces. But White Fang, who was supporting his broken body, emitted a dense black aura, mixed with the rolling dark clouds and lightning. Layers and layers of it entangled Azure Dragon. White Tooth's injuries were more serious. The surrounding black qi became thicker and deeper. It could be said the Azure Dragon was completely bound by this mass of black qi. This was White Tooth's motive. Yiqing Luo finally understood. Earlier when Azure Dragon obviously had the upper hand, why was her heart beating so fast? At the time, she did not realize this. Damn it! How dare they plot against Azure Dragon? Yiqing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a chilly killing intent. Powerful and thick profound energy surged out from his body. Her fingertips twitched. The devouring flame fan in his hand unleashed a powerful pressure. It kicked up a huge hurricane and headed straight for the Azure Dragon. Yiqing Luo. Xiao Yulu gave a cold harumph, as she once again entangled Yiqing Luo crazily. Yiqing Luo's entire mind was occupied by the green dragon. Without any hesitation, she waved her palm and shot out a stream of profound qi. The surrounding air waves surged and twisted. It formed an invisible wave that forced Xiao Yulu back. Yiqing Luo leapt up and charged towards the green dragon. Don't come any closer. The Azure Dragon's hoarse voice rang out in his mind. His voice was filled with suppressed pain. How could it not be painful? The Azure Dragon was the leader of the 4 great sacred beasts, a righteous sacred beast. He had just woken up not long ago, and because he had formed a blood contract with her, his strength had yet to recover. Furthermore, he was suppressed by the realm and the contract, while he was being entangled by White Tooth's evil qi. It was as if its soul and psychic power were being entangled by the evil energy. Father. Shiju couldn't sit still in the pet space. Under the pain, his broken body kept twitching and twisting. Even the dense black aura was devoured by the waves of raging flames. This scene caused the expression of Sanyu, who was originally watching by the side, to darken. Yuji frowned. White Fang was in the first batch of battle pets. Her weapon shouldn't have been able to kill White Fang. She can even purify White Fang's evil chi. Yu Nu's eyes widened in shock. Yu Han hugged Yu Nu's slender waist tightly, as her expression was icy cold. This is different from the results of the investigation. We must start from her weapon. Wait. Yu Nu suddenly covered her mouth, as she cried out in shock, look at her weapon. Yu Ji and Yu Han immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw the sky full of black fog, and under the red glow. Chapter 37:15. A flickering light aura flashed on the glowing flame fan. The surging profound energy lingered on the gourd flame fan. It caused her figure that was red like the blazing sun to seem like a pure and elegant poppy. Countless wind blades circled around the girl's body in a frenzy. Her weapon evolved. An evolvable artifact. Triple Nether exclaimed in astonishment. They had not expected that the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands could actually evolve at this juncture. The evolution of the weapon was equivalent to the evolution of the whole body. Even the mental energy within the gourd flame fan, which had been refined with the divine power of the netherworld, had evolved. Therefore, when dealing with a battle pet like White Fang, the evolved spirit would cover up White Fang's own evil aura. Yu Nu's beautiful eyes dimmed a little. She bit her red lips with a trace of resentment in her eyes. That slut, she was really damn lucky. At a time like this, her weapon could still evolve. However, Dark Girl's eyes gradually darkened. A faint black aura leaked out from between his brows. So what if it evolved? Today, they had made all the necessary preparations. He would definitely get rid of that slut here. On the other side, Yiqing Luo had also sensed the surging energy from the glower flame fan. She quickly dispersed the black fog that enveloped the azure dragon and slashed a wind blade at White Fang. White Fang roared and tried to break free. But Yiqing Luo's attacks were swift and fierce. White Fang was cut in half at the waist. After the dragon's head was separated from its body, it fell limply to the ground. The two parts of its huge body kept wriggling. However, he was unable to reconnect the two halves of his body. The black mist slowly dispersed. The azure dragon's slightly tired head was revealed. Yiqing Luo looked towards Qiao Yulu's direction. Qiao Yulu was lying on the spot where she had fallen, her body arched as if she was in so much pain that she couldn't stand up. She retracted her gaze and sped up to purify the evil aura around the azure dragon. Father! Suddenly, the clear voice of a child rang in his ears. Yiqing Luo felt a tightness in her chest. Shiju actually forcefully scurried out from the pet space. The palm-sized ball pounced towards the azure dragon. Shiju! Come back! Jin, don't come over. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened as she cried out anxiously. The azure dragon's voice rang out. But, it was too late for Yiqing Luo to stop him. Thick black fog covered Shiju's body in a split second. The dragon head that was originally lying on the ground and ceaselessly curled up suddenly leaped up and opened its mouth to swallow Shiju into its stomach. Shiju! Yiqing Luo's hand caught empty air. With a backhand punch, she heavily smashed White Fang's head. White Fang's head smashed onto the ground and bounced a few times. Spit out Shiju! Yiqing Luo stepped on by Ya's head as she shouted sternly. White Tooth played dead. Jin, Azure Dragon was flustered, and his eyes widened. The black mist around its body also surged wildly due to the change in its mood. The Azure Dragon immediately let out a muffled groan as it was entangled. Its whiskers shook, and its green dragon scales turned into streaks of light. It desperately tried to break free from the entanglement of the evil energy. Yiqing Luo comforted the Azure Dragon in her heart. Her long and narrow eyes were suffused with an icy chill. She stepped hard on by Ye's head a few times. Yi Qing Luo, if you don't listen to me obediently, the sword will not have eyes. Just at this moment, a soft voice was transmitted into Yi Qing Luo's ears. There was an obvious sense of pride in that voice. Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled. Chapter 37:16. Among the black-robed men, the leader held a man in his hand and a sharp blade was pressed against the man's neck. The man's handsome face was steely green as his eyes were filled with anger. After meeting Yi Qing Luo's gaze, he instantly turned guilty. Ah Xing. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted as she looked at the man who was restrained and called out softly. I'm sorry. Pei Xing apologized softly. This bunch of black-robed men were simply too sinister. Earlier when Shi Ju appeared and was swallowed by White Tooth, it made him place all his attention on Yi Qing Luo. Momentarily, he neglected the approaching pharaoh his own mistake. He actually became all Luo's burden. Pei Xing did not feel good in his heart. Pharaoh he chose him as a tool to threaten all Luo. It was because he was too weak. If he was slightly stronger, the other party wouldn't have this chance. He wouldn't become all Luo's burden. The more he thought, the more guilty Pei Xing felt. TSK. Pharaoh he laughed coldly, Yi Qing Luo, so what if your luck is good? Your only shortcoming is that you're too soft-hearted. I want to see if your life is more important or your little brother's life is more important. As Pharaoh he said that, he held Pei Xing's neck tightly. His face was filled with a complacent smile. Pei Xing's features contorted in pain as he tried to struggle but was trapped even tighter. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened. Her slender fingers clenched into a fist as her brows overflowed with a chilly intent. Despicable. Pharaoh actually used Pei Xing to threaten her. Don't bother about me. Ah Luo, don't bother. Ah! Pei Xing screamed. Suddenly, Pharaoh he's blade grazed Pei Xing's neck. Pei Xing drew in a cold breath from the pain as he grimaced in pain, unable to open his mouth. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened as she stared coldly at Pharaoh you'd better control your hand. If you hurt him again, you can try to see if you can still use him to threaten me. Pharaoh he's hand trembled as the expression on his face turned stiff. He suppressed the fear in his heart as he shouted at Yi Qing Luo, stand aside obediently. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were gloomy as she clenched her fingers tightly. His knuckles were pale from the strength of his grip. Roar! The azure dragon gradually revealed itself in the black fog. He opened his eyes wide and stared at White Fang's head, his dragon breath surging. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo was in a dilemma. On the other side was Pei Xing. On one side was Shi Ju. If she didn't move, what would happen to Shi Ju after it was swallowed by White Fang? White Fang's body was filled with evil energy. Could Shi Ju's small body withstand it? If they moved, Pharaoh he would definitely not hesitate to take Pei Xing's life. Since she had promised to help Pei Xing, she would definitely help him to the end. If Pei Xing lost his life because of this, she would feel guilty. Also, the profounders from the various powers in the surroundings. They were all waiting for a chance to leave the auction. What to do? Yi Qing Luo's complexion was pale and her tightly pursed pink lips were trembling slightly. Ah Luo, behind you. Suddenly, he heard Xiao Yinyan's panicked voice. There were a few figures who were rushing towards her at high speed. Yi Qing Luo's brows twitched as she was just about to move. But Yu Nu laughed faintly, be obedient and don't move. If you alarm Pharaoh he and his hand trembles. That would be bad. Chapter 37:17. Two light and indifferent sentences. It made Yi Qing Luo's body which wanted to dodge suddenly froze. In the next instant, a ferocious gust of wind from a palm landed heavily on her back. Yiqing Luo only felt a wave of intense pain as her internal organs churned. Her body staggered a few steps forward. Blood spilled out from the corner of her mouth. She coughed violently as she covered her mouth. Ah Luo. Di Fu. Miss D. Miss Yi. The surrounding crowd cried out in shock. Ha ha ha. Yiqing Luo, you're just a so-so. While the crowd was worried, they were discussing in whispers. Xiao Yulu's voice was very obvious. Xiao Yulu looked complacently at Yiqing Luo, who was spitting out blood as she finally felt much better. What a ridiculous brotherly relationship. Since you want to use your life to exchange for that trash's life, then I shall fulfill your wish. Xiao Yulu sneered as her lips twitched. Following that, she flipped her palm and attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Her attack was extremely fast, totally not giving Yiqing Luo any chance to breathe. Yiqing Luo clutched her chest as it was in extreme pain. Even the slightest movement of his body would cause his internal organs to feel a sharp pain as if they were being torn apart. Xiao Yulu's attack made her face turn paler. She couldn't dodge. She couldn't resist. Was Yunu doing this on purpose, trying to torture her in this way? Seeing Xiao Yulu's attack getting closer, the worried growls and Yunu's complacent voice continued, "None of you move. Whoever dares to stop me, this lad is dead." When Xiao Yinyan and the rest heard this, they wanted to go up to stop her, but they were all rooted to the ground as their eyes were filled with hesitation. F***K. I don't care if he dies or not. You bunch of trash, how dare you touch my people, I will skin you alive. Old Lai didn't have the patience to think so much. He was only concerned about Yiqing Luo alone. Gathering treasures and being amiable, that was on account of Yiqing Luo. Especially now, that bunch of people from secluded palace were old enemies. Seeing them, Old Lai had the intention to kill them. How could he possibly calm down? Old Lai's rage only lasted for a short moment. The biting cold profound energy which Xiao Yulu was brewing had already attacked towards Yiqing Luo's face. Pei Xing's pupils constricted. Suddenly, an extremely dazzling golden light erupted from his eyes. He stared at Yiqing Luo's direction. There seemed to be some kind of anger in his heart that kept surging. It was all because of him. It was all because of him. Ah Luo was threatened by others. Ah Luo was injured. Obviously, they wanted to use this method to torture Ah Luo. He could not stand by and watch Ah Luo get injured because of her. Ah Luo had sacrificed so much for him. He couldn't become Ah Luo's burden. You, all of you, deserve to die. From Pei Xing's throat came a roar that sounded like that of a trapped beast. His voice was hoarse, making it hard to hear what he was saying. Pharaoh Crane only felt that the suppressed man's aura suddenly rose. He didn't take it to heart. He just moved the sword closer to the man's neck. However, as soon as he moved, a bam sound was heard. The man's body suddenly exploded with a surge of raging energy. The thick profound energy was like a spider web as it spread in the air. The majestic and powerful energy swept up a slight hurricane. Bam! Pharaoh Crane's body was suddenly repelled by the sudden burst of profound energy. Chapter 37:18. His entire body was emitting a dense, profound light. The surrounding black-robed men and Pharaoh he were all injured by that profound ray. What's going on? Pharaoh he's body was sent flying, and with a somersault in mid-air, he crashed onto a building. He clutched his chest as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Wasn't that lad without the strength to even truss a chicken? How did he suddenly become so powerful? It was really uncanny. The commotion over here made Three Nether's expression turn extremely cold and solemn. Ghost Girl's reaction was extremely fast. The moment she sensed the change in Pei Xing's aura, her cold and gloomy eyes were filled with an eerie chill. Following that, she was like an arrow leaving the bow as she charged towards Yiqing Luo's direction. And on Yiqing Luo's side, indeed. At the moment when Pei Xing resisted, Yiqing Luo swiftly flipped her hand as she clasped her wrist, which was attacking towards her face. Tightly, her 5 fingers clenched tightly. A "Kacha" sound was heard. Xiao Yulu's wrist broke in response. Yiqing Luo's speed was extremely fast. It was almost in a blink of an eye. After Pei Xing broke free from the restraint, her entire body started to revolve, a majestic profound energy which contained an earth-shattering energy, stirring up the surrounding air as layers of clear and crystalline qi waves appeared, swiftly counterattacking towards Xiao Yulu. Xiao Yulu's face turned pale as black qi filled the space between her brows, as though her entire face was shrouded in black qi. It made her face, which was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as jade, look sinister and treacherous. Yiqing Luo's counterattack made Xiao Yulu's complacent expression freeze on her face. Without Pharaoh he making use of Pei Xing to balance Yiqing Luo. She was totally not Yiqing Luo's opponent, who was in a rage. Suddenly, Xiao Yulu's eyes flashed as she saw a certain spot. Her pupils, which were filled with black qi, suddenly surged with waves after waves of turbulent evil qi. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes suddenly grew longer, as though she had reacted to something. She swiftly turned sideways. But no matter how fast her reaction was, she was still a step too late. That sinister sneer on Ghost Girl's face was already nearing. At the instant when she turned sideways, Xiao Yulu also received Yunu's signal and raised her hand to attack Yiqing Luo. One at the front and one at the back, the 2 sides attacked from both sides. Yiqing Luo had nowhere to hide. Yunu's red lips curled into a perfect arc as she gave a tender smile. Yiqing Luo, you're still defeated in my hands after all. Her voice was soft and gentle. However, his attacks were so swift and fierce that it caused people's hearts to tremble. An earth-shattering momentum exploded in the air. Yiqing Luo only felt a bone-piercing chill rising from her spine. Her mind worked quickly. It was too late for him to use his footwork to escape. All she could do was, he dodged one attack and endured the other. If she had to choose, she would definitely choose to avoid Yunu's attack. However, she had just been hit by Xiao Yulu's palm wind, and her internal organs were still in a damaged state. If he took another palm strike, I'm afraid her 5 viscera and 6 bowels would rupture. Both of them were as fast as lightning, totally not giving Yiqing Luo any time to think. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. She pursed her lips tightly and could only choose the most beneficial method for herself. Old man Tsang, protect my heart. Yiqing Luo said this in her heart. Her body had already swiftly turned towards Yunu, meeting against Yunu's attack. Yiqing Luo's back was exposed in front of Xiao Yulu. Xiao Yulu's eyes flashed past a gloomy smile. But just as Xiao Yulu used all her strength to take Yiqing Luo's life, suddenly, a gust of gloomy cold wind fluttered and enveloped her palm. Chapter 37:19. No. It wasn't just a surge of energy. Xiao Yulu sensed in horror that when the cold wind blew over, and a majestic and vigorous energy was rapidly approaching. Violent howling. Xiao Yulu could even see the entrance to hell opening up towards her. No. She didn't want to die. Xiao Yulu was terrified. She wanted to retract her hands, which had already attacked. However, the coldness seemed to have frozen her hands and body, making her unable to move at all. At this moment, Xiao Yulu finally understood. Earlier, Yiqing Luo knew that danger was approaching. But she could only stand on the spot, passively waiting for the pain to descend. The only difference was Yiqing Luo was being coerced, standing there to suffer without any resistance. Whereas she wanted to hide, but had no strength to hide. A miserable shriek came out from Qiao Yulu's mouth. Qiao Yulu's body suddenly flew backwards, crashing heavily onto the ground. She could even hear the sound of her bones breaking when her body crashed onto the ground. Qiao Yulu's entire face was twisted. Her wide-opened eyes were filled with unconcealable fear. Qiao Yulu was overwhelmed with shock. But someone's heart skipped a beat, as various emotions of sweetness and astonishment spread in her heart. After asking Old Man Tsang to protect her heart meridians, Yiqing Luo originally wanted to forcefully receive Qiao Yulu's attack. However, at the most critical moment, she only felt her waist suddenly tightened. Tightly. A strong and powerful force tightly hugged her waist. Both her feet were in the air, as she was brought into a warm embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into her nostrils. It instantly soothed the restlessness and uneasiness in her heart. Yiqing Luo's heart was instantly lifted. Even her charming eyes were slightly opened in disbelief. It's you. She heard Ghost Girl's panicked voice. Following that was the sound of Ghost Girl escaping in the direction of the other two nethers. Yiqing Luo was buried in that person's embrace, so she couldn't see the situation. But she could clearly hear the sound of the air ripple in the air. The sound of Ghost Girl escaping had just started, when it suddenly stopped. As though she was intercepted in the middle. Indeed, at the next instant, Yiqing Luo heard a painful moan. Yiqing Luo snuggled into that man's arms as she popped out her little head. Ghost Girl was suspended in the air, kicking her legs repeatedly. Her body and neck were tightly bound by an invisible force. Yunu's face turned pale as she opened her mouth and eyes wide, desperately looking towards Yiqing Luo's direction, hoping to plead for leniency. Meanwhile, a ray of purple profound light shot out from Dark Girl's neck. As the purple light circulated, it enveloped the azure dragon. In an instant, the black fog around the azure dragon dissipated. Then, the purple profound light shot towards the half of the head that had swallowed Shiju. Purple light flashed. Shiju's small body was faintly discernible. After the azure dragon broke free, it immediately rushed towards White Fang's severed head. The dragon eyes nervously stared at the faintly discernible Shiju. Roar! Shiju's small voice sounded normal and didn't seem to be injured. Yiqing Luo's suspenseful heart was finally suppressed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered. Her fingers, which were pressed on the chest of the person who was hugging her, unconsciously curled up. That person's chest was boiling hot and the rhythmic feeling of his heartbeat was like a drum, beating heavily on her palm. Chapter 37:20. Between her brows, there was a burning sense of warmth and tenderness. She seemed to be confirming something, but also seemed to be in a dream. Cautiously, he raised his eyes and looked at that person's face, under the sky full of flying sand and blood. The man's peerlessly handsome face was still as outstanding as ever. His purple robe billowed, his black hair scattered on his shoulders. The dancing hurricane floated his black hair. The handsome face that could almost captivate one's soul was reflected in the young girl's pupils at close range. The man's eyes were filled with a smile. His peach blossom eyes were full of pampering for the young girl. Their eyes met. As if even the air was seeping with sweetness. Yiqing Luo's pupils, under the man's pampering gaze, dilated little by little. Her eyelashes were gradually stained with moisture. Her beautiful face was like a peach blossom in March, floating on a cloud. Ah, Xian! The young girl's soft voice was choked with emotion. Her arms tightly wrapped around the man's neck. Smelling the man's scent. feeling the man's warmth. As if this was the only way to confirm that he had really appeared in front of her. Not in the spiritual state. Not an illusion. But the real him. The man's arms wrapped around her slender waist, his thin lips slightly hooked, gently falling on her hair. A low and magnetic voice came out of his mouth. Yes, it's me. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's arms tightened, completely bringing her delicate body into his arms. She had never thought that Dmo Xian would actually appear in Without Embroiling City. And appear in front of her. Obviously, when they were in the Spirit Devourer formation, his spirit body had been affected. They had agreed that she would go to Without Shadow City to look for him. Why did he come to Without Shadow City alone? Then his body. Could it take it? This thought made Yiqing Luo's heart clench. She suddenly pulled the distance between the two of them and looked up at him carefully. Ah Xian, you. Are you all right? The man's pampering gaze seemed to be able to squeeze water out of it. Just a glance. Her heart softened and melted. He stared at her face, smiled, and shook his head. Don't worry, you value my body so much, how can I let you worry? Yiqing Luo looked at him without blinking. She seemed to want to see it in his eyes. He wanted to see if his words were true or false. It was just that he was watching and watching. Under the man's gentle smiling gaze. That soft spot in Yiqing Luo's heart felt as though it had been hit hard by something. Tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. Don't cry. His voice was gentle, and he sounded a little panicked. His broad and warm fingers covered the corners of her eyes. His slender fingers wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He comforted her in a low voice. I'm really fine. Don't cry. My heart hurts when I see you cry. It was better if the man didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as tears started to flow down uncontrollably. She suddenly plunged into his arms, grabbed his clothes, and said with a sobbing voice, Fool! Why did he have to force himself? How can I not know about your body's condition? Stay in Shadow City and recuperate your body, and wait for me to look for you, all right? She choked with sobs as her tears flowed non-stop. Why are you still acting tough in front of me? Don't cry. The man's voice became even softer. Hot lips replaced the fingers, fell on her eyes. Chapter 37:21. For you, I've never felt forced. Dmo Xian cupped the young lady's face with both hands. The two of them exchanged glances. His gaze was gentle and loving as he explained dotingly, You're in trouble, and if I'm not around, how will you be able to recuperate in peace? His fingers gently brushed past the stray hairs on her cheek and tucked it behind her ear as he continued, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed tightly. Her tears were still uncontrollable. Her eyes widened as she stared fiercely at Dmo Xian, her eyes filled with rebuke. Dmo Xian's lips curled as he lowered his head and kissed her lips, appeasing the young lady's bellyful of displeasure. His lips were very hot. The scorching heat seemed as though it was going to melt her. The familiar scent and sweetness intertwined. Yiqing Luo had no strength to resist, nor was she willing to resist. Dmo Xian's appearance made the entire auction's people and monsters all stop what they were doing. Pairs of gazes converged onto Dmo Xian in unison. Everyone only saw the moment the man appeared. He pulled Yiqing Luo into his arms. While he raised his palm, as though he had just flicked it in the air. Immediately after, everything in the surroundings were restrained by an invisible force. Ghost Girl was restrained. The evil qi which trapped the green dragon was purified. Even White Fang, who had swallowed Shiju, was also forced out of his mouth. What kind of power was this? It was so powerful that he just moved his hand and easily solved the predicament in front of him. The man was treacherous and devilish, like an Asura from hell, holding the power of life and death. Everyone's heart couldn't help but tremble. But, what made everyone shocked was, that man who was like an Asura killing god, faced Yi Qing Luo. His entire person seemed to be plated with a layer of gentle light. As though in his eyes, there was only Yi Qing Luo alone. That deep affection. It was filled with love. But, this kind of tenderness and pampering, appeared on this man. There was no sense of incompatibility at all. Just like, for someone as bloodthirsty as him, the gentleness when facing Yi Qing Luo was perfectly justified. Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, in this treacherous and sweet atmosphere, an icy cold voice broke the atmosphere at this moment. It also called back everyone's will. Even without seeing the owner of the voice, one could feel the coldness in the tone. Hearing this sound, Xiao Yulu, who was lying on the ground with all the bones in her body shattered to the point that she could not get up, suddenly turned her head around. She remembered that when she felt the power of the purple-robed man in front of her had trapped her, she felt a chill run down her spine. He sensed the power of another person. Was it this person? Who could it be? Why were there so many people appearing to save that slut Yi Qing Luo? When Xiao Yulu looked over, it was a man with a cold appearance, like an iceberg. His temperament was as cold as ice, and even his eyes were like ice shards. However, he was wearing a long robe that looked like raging flames. The bright red color added a touch of liveliness to the man's expressionless face. Xiao Yulu's pupils shrank. She recognized it. This red-robed man, wasn't he, the person in the private room of the Red Clarity Pavilion? In other words, this person was from the Red Clarity Pavilion. Hearing Zhu Wuxin's cold voice, the young lady who was immersed in the joy of charging with her beloved man, finally regained her senses. Her cheeks instantly flushed red. Chapter 37:22. But her actions were quickly stopped by Dmo Xian. A slightly cold, jealous voice came close to Yi Qing Luo's ears. Why is he here? Yi Qing Luo's petite body stiffened. He's here to take part in the auction. Before this, I don't know anything. If a certain overlord's vinegar jar was overturned, the consequences were simply too severe. Oh. The man's ending tone rose, not knowing if he believed Yi Qing Luo's words or not. But the man's dangerous tone told Yi Qing Luo this matter was not over yet. Yi Qing Luo wanted to cry but no tears came out. Everything about her man was good. It was this sea of vinegar which had a little bit of terror. Don't bother about him first, you're here. Cat and the rest are here too. Yi Qing Luo coughed lightly as she immediately changed the topic. Dmo Xian's peripheral vision shot a glance at the expressionless Zhu Wuxian who was standing not too far away. His thin lips curled slightly as the hand which was encircled around Yi Qing Luo's waist suddenly tightened. His tall figure moved slightly, blocking in front of Yi Qing Luo, blocking Zhu Wuxian's vision. Without waiting for Yi Qing Luo to speak, his eyes drooped as he whispered into her ear, "They're all here. They're very worried about you." Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up slightly, but following that, she revealed a worried expression. "How did you guys come in? Wasn't the auction hall sealed by an array formation? No one should be able to enter and no one should be able to leave. Everyone is already in this array. If we can't get out, wouldn't we be trapped here? You don't believe me?" Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose as he gently pinched it, his eyes filled with adoration. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. "I'm very satisfied that you're able to stay by my side and let me see you. I'm worried about your body. Since I'm here, naturally I won't let you worry." His hand slid to her cheek as he gently pinched it. "Don't think that I'm so weak." Yi Qing Luo looked at him fixedly as the tears which she had finally stopped started flowing again. She bit her lower lip hard. Her arms hugged his waist tightly as she buried her head in his arms. "All right, I believe you. So, for the sake of me who is so worried about you, I absolutely cannot let myself get hurt." Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he raised his hand and stroked her hair, comforting her in a warm voice. Chu Wuxin looked expressionlessly at the scene before him. He watched as the girl threw herself into the man's arms. A sweet smile appeared on the girl's face. Looking at the young girl's face, it was filled with happiness. His heart felt as if it was being pierced by countless needles. Yiqing Luo had obviously heard his voice. She would shyly look up at him from the man's arms. Clearly, there was already a shadow of him in her eyes. However, in the next instant, without any hesitation, she threw herself back into the man's arms. That decisiveness, that clear cut. It seemed to be telling him in this way. In this life, the only person she would choose was that man, the man named Dmo Xian. That man who, even when Yiqing Luo was in a coma, was still lingering in her mouth, calling out incessantly. She knew. Just now, when Dmo Xian struck out, he also appeared to save her. Disregarding the agreement with the secluded palace, just because he wasn't willing to see her get hurt. But in the end, he was still a step too late. Just like how he had promised her in the future. But after she grew up, he appeared in front of her a step too late. Chapter 37-23. It was destined that he was one step later than Dmo Xian. Zhu Wu Axian slowly shut his icy cold eyes. A sorrowful emotion started to spread around him. But, no matter how painful and unbearable his heart was, the expression on his face was so cold. It was as if nothing could affect his emotions and expression. Death God Castle's Castle Lord. When Yu Ji saw Zhu Wu Axian, his expression changed slightly. "You. Why are you here?" He seemed to have thought of something as he speedily looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. "You." Zhu Wu Axian suddenly opened his eyes. His sinister gaze was as cold as frost. It swept past Yu Ji faintly, like December's ice, brushed past Yu Ji's body. Yu Ji shuddered as the remaining words were stuck in his throat. Yu Han's eyes were slightly red as green veins popped out on her forehead. "Death God Castle's Castle Lord. Although revered and you are no longer working together, but now that you've appeared here and disrupted Revered's plans, as a former comrade, isn't it a little inexcusable?" Yu Han's questioning didn't get any response from Zhu Wu Axian. Yu Han looked at Yu Ji, who was being held in mid-air, struggling less and less as she continued anxiously. "Previously you've already spoiled Revered's plans. If you continue to interfere in this matter, then don't blame Revered for not taking into consideration the relationship between the both of you." But no matter what Yu Han said, Zhu Wu Axian didn't even give her a glance. But this noise made Yiqing Luo notice it. She heard Yu Han's words and looked at Zhu Wu Axian as her slender brows creased slightly. Zhu Wu Axian had really broken off the collaboration with the mastermind of Nether Palace. Previously she had intentionally mentioned to him to give up on the collaboration with Nether Palace. At that time, didn't he have that intention? Zhu Wu Axian had many things he wanted to do. He needed something from Nether Palace to achieve his own motive. So Yiqing Luo didn't insist. But now, Zhu Wu Axian had really broken off the collaboration with Nether Palace. Then had his motive been achieved? Death God Castle's Castle Lord. Yu Han wanted to continue saying something, but she was interrupted by a sweet voice. "The person is in Xian's hands. What are you talking about with Zhu Wu Axian?" Yu Han was stunned as she looked at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as her lips curled up slightly as she gave a faint smile. "This matter has nothing to do with Zhu Wu Axian. Even if you talk till your mouth breaks, it's of no use." "You." Yu Han's face was ashen. "Release Yu Nu." Wouldn't it be very embarrassing for Ah Xian to release him just because you said so? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as her eyes curved into a crescent smile. Moreover, why should I let go of the prey that I've already gotten my hands on? Yiqing Luo's voice paused. Suddenly, the smile on his face became extremely cold. Chapter 37:24. Impossible. Yu Ji shouted sternly. Yuhan clenched her fists tightly as her scarlet eyes stared at him. I can't let anything happen to Yunu. Whether she dies or not has nothing to do with me. Yu Ji's expression was cold. Moreover, I don't want to die. He shot a cold glance at Yunu's direction as he said word by word, don't forget what punishment we will receive if we fail this mission. Yuhan's face suddenly turned pale. Yu Ji continued, I have no opinion if you want to die with her, but don't think of sacrificing me to fulfill your love. Yu Ji's words ended and his expression instantly turned vicious. He waved his hand as he shouted sternly, go. Sweep those trash with the fastest speed. After the black-robed men received the order, they started to surge towards the various powerhouses cultivators in the auction. Boom! Profound energy that could topple mountains and overturn the seas suddenly surged. Various powerhouses cultivators thought that they were saved. But in the next instance, they were devoured by those black-robed men. Yu Ji. Yuhan's eyes were scarlet red as she held on to Yu Ji's wrist. Yu Ji laughed coldly as he shook off Yuhan's hand. If you want to die, then go ahead and die. He absolutely had to survive. Suddenly, a painful shriek was heard. Yuhan's pupils constricted. He swiftly looked towards the direction where the sound came from. He saw that Yunu, who was originally restrained in mid-air by an invisible force, her neck had been replaced by a pale white finger. Yunu cried out in pain. But very quickly, all her voice was strangled in her throat. Yunu. Yuhan's eyes widened as she looked at Yunu, whose face was filled with pain as she screamed. Ugh! Yunu stretched out her hand towards Yuhan as she pleaded for help. Yuhan wanted to rush forward. But her wrist was held by Yu Ji. Do you really want to die? Yunu. Yuhan's eyes were red as she struggled to look at Yunu's painful look, as though she didn't notice Yu Ji's obstruction. Since you've already made your choice, then, this woman, shall be our appetizer. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she looked at Yuhan. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Her fingers that were clasped around Nethergirl's neck seemed to be casually resting on it. She then lowered her voice and said in a mocking tone, your hearts are all black. Both of you are black. Why do you still need to talk about love? You're lying. Yunu spat out a few words with difficulty. He loves me, he will definitely save me. Yiqing Luo raised her brows, really? But why do I feel that he loves himself more than you? The expression on Ghost Girl's face became increasingly twisted and sinister. She hated Yiqing Luo's light and indifferent expression. Wasn't it because he had the protection of the Overlord? Didn't he just think that he had the so-called love? Who doesn't have love? Her Yuhan would never give up on her. Yunu roared in her heart in a heart-rending manner. However, a certain part of his heart was filled with fear and unease, and it trembled intensely. She didn't know what she was panicking about. Or perhaps she had already guessed something but wasn't willing to admit it. Yiqing Luo sneered as she looked at Yuhan with a smile, on the account that you're in so much pain, I'll give you a chance to choose. The deal that I've mentioned, are you going to agree, or not? Yuhan's scarlet eyes widened as the features on her face distorted. Chapter 37:25. She hadn't even finished her clamorous words. Suddenly, Yuhan's wrist, which was held tightly, loosened. She heard Yu Ji's impatient voice, if you want to prove your love, then accompany her to die. At that moment, Yuhan became quiet. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as she looked at Yunu's twisted face and smiled. See, it's not that I don't want to give you a chance to prove your love, but what a pity. Yunu's pupils dilated slowly. Her throat suddenly tightened. As though all her breathing was blocked in her throat. She didn't even have time to struggle. Following that, she felt a shapeless flow of air gushing into her internal organs. As though a sharp blade was cutting everything in her body. She struggled and twisted in pain. But there was no way to reduce the pain in her body. She moaned and even wanted to tear her skin apart, to expel the tearing pain in her body. Suddenly, her throat seemed to be pulled by some gas. She cried out in pain, "Oh!" She was in pain, venting. Her mouth kept on screaming Yuhan's name. Not knowing when, Yiqing Luo had let go of her. She floated in mid-air, screaming and struggling in pain. She couldn't take it. Her body wriggled as she looked at Yuhan. "Save me. Yuhan, save me." But that man who kept saying that he loved her. However, when his eyes met hers, he slowly moved his head away. Yuhan didn't move. He had no intention to save her. Yuji didn't hold him back at all. It was him who had already given up on her. Yunu's screams gradually stopped. In her mind, the words which Yiqing Luo said to her ears inexplicably rang, "Your hearts are all black. Why do you need to talk about love?" That's right. All black. They were all selfish. The so-called talk about love, the so-called pledge of eternal love. Totally not suitable for people like them. So painful. So painful. Yunu couldn't tell if it was Yuhan's giving up which made her heart ache. Or the flow of air in her internal organs which made her feel pain. Just as the pain was eroding her, causing her to lose focus. Suddenly, Ghost Girl felt her floating body being pulled into a warm embrace. That warmth seemed to ease the torturous pain in her body. Yunu's heart tightened. Joy spread from the bottom of his heart. Yuhan, she knew it, Yuhan would never give up on her so easily. However, the moment she slowly lifted her gaze. His gaze landed on the figure. Her joyful expression froze on her face. It's you," Yunu spoke in a hoarse voice that was filled with surprise. The man who was holding her was dressed in a loose black robe that covered his entire body. Only from Yunu's angle could she see the man's face under the black robe. In particular, she could clearly see the man's red eyes. The man frowned, his black robe fluttering in the wind. It was as if he was suffering from some great pain. The dark maiden stared blankly at the man. He also saw it clearly, when the man was hugging her, he had to endure the corrosion of the surrounding barrier. That was the enchantment which Yiqing Luo had set up. She wanted the people from the secluded palace, wanted the various powerhouses cultivators to watch her die in agony. He actually disregarded the corrosion of the enchantment and charged right in front of her. "I'm sorry, I wasn't able to save you." The man's voice was filled with guilt as the hand which was hugging Yunu tightened. Yunu trembled. It was the pain in her body. Chapter 37-26. Yuming, you're so silly. Yunu grinned as she laughed softly. The moment she laughed, a big mouthful of blood gushed out from her mouth. It was accompanied by a painful cough. But she was still laughing. She raised her hand and placed it on the man's face. But, before her hand could reach the man, her body convulsed violently. The light in her eyes was extinguished bit by bit. The hand that was raised also drooped down weakly. A teardrop rolled down from the corner of her eye. No one knew if this teardrop was complaining about her lack of understanding of people. Or was it the guilt towards the man? Once Yunu died. The surrounding enchantment was removed. The man carried the person in his arms, as he slowly landed on the ground. His eyes were looking at the person in his arms, whose eyes were shut. On the surface, it was calm. But his inner heart was already in turmoil. Yu Ming. Yuhan pounced over, as she stared fiercely at this man who suddenly appeared, as she shouted sternly, "Hand Yu Nu's corpse to me." Yu Ming ignored her. Yuhan pounced forward, as she stretched out her hand to snatch Yu Nu. Before she could get close, Yu Ming kicked her chest, scram. Yuhan was not prepared, as she was kicked to the ground. He flipped over like a carp and stood up. Netherworld. Yu Nu is my woman. The person she loves is me. I believe, even if she dies, she wants to die in my arms. Yuhan. Yu Ming slowly raised his head. Under the black robe, that pair of scarlet eyes gave off a shocking cold glint. The person who has the least right to say this is you. His voice was icy cold, filled with viciousness. Obviously, you could save her, but for your own life, you gave up on her. Such a selfish person, what right do you have to touch her? Yuhan was stunned by Yu Ming's eyes. But looking at Yu Nu in Yu Ming's arms, her heart felt especially upset. Yuhan naturally liked Yu Nu. So many years of feelings, it couldn't be faked. But between love and his own life, he chose himself. Yiqing Luo's conditions, he couldn't possibly agree to it. Even if Yu Ji didn't stop him, he couldn't possibly agree to it. In Nirvana realm, their ghost hands 5 you had failed time and time again. If they failed this mission again, the Venerable would definitely take their lives. And he would use the cruelest way to punish their incompetence. TSK. Ah Xian, I'm right, aren't I? Your heart is black, and so is your love life. A clear and melodious voice rang out lightly. That laughter was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Yuhan's face instantly turned ashen, and a sinister black aura appeared between her brows. Following the girl's voice, Yu Ming slowly looked over. Yiqing Luo calmly waved at Yu Ming, long time no see. Yu Ming lowered his head and took a look at Yu Nu in his arms before raising his head and meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze. His scarlet eyes seemed to be burning with a sea of fire. Seeing this, Yuhan's eyes flashed. Yu Ming, now is not the time to be calculative. You're also a member of the secluded palace, and your most beloved secluded maiden had died in Yiqing Luo's hands. Even if it's to avenge Yu Nu, you should help. The Netherworld did not speak. I know you have the Netherworld mirror. You just need to use the Netherworld mirror to control the Venerable Sovereign. We'll take care of the rest. Yuhan added. He bumped Yu Ji again. Yu Ji's face darkened, but he thought about their mission and the nether mirror in Yu Ming's hand. Chapter 37:27. As Yu Ji spoke, he sized up Yu Ming's expression. Ghost Maiden's pain was caused by Yiqing Luo. You love Ghost Maiden so deeply, you will definitely avenge her, right? Yu Ji and Yuhan had been persuading him for a long time. Yu Ming, who had been silent like a stone statue, finally moved. He carried Ghost Maiden's corpse as he slowly moved a few steps. He faced Yu Ji and Yuhan's direction. His face was expressionless, his eyes indifferent. You're right, I should avenge Ghost Maiden. His voice was very soft, so soft that if one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear what he said. Yu Ji and Yuhan's eyes lit up instantly. Yu Ming carried Ghost Maiden as he slowly walked towards Yuhan's direction. He walked very slowly. As he walked, he lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, that blood on the corner of her mouth, that painful expression even in death. A trace of treachery flashed past his scarlet eyes. On the other side, everyone who saw this scene had a grave expression. Ah Luo. Who is that person? From their tone, they seem to have something that can restrain us. Qiao Yin frowned as he asked solemnly. His vision seemed to sweep past the man beside Yi Qing Luo. It wasn't hard to sense that the man had enmity towards him. Especially when he shouted out the two words, Ah Luo. That man's icy cold gaze seemed as though it was going to freeze him into ice. That man was Ah Luo's fiancé. In other words, the legendary Honorable Dizun. Qiao Yin's feeling wasn't wrong. Dmo Xian not only had enmity towards him. He didn't even allow Yi Qing Luo to talk to him. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to reply, Dmo Xian suddenly clasped Yi Qing Luo's waist tightly as he spoke in a cold voice, trying to restrain me. I can exterminate them anytime. Finishing his words, he lowered his eyes and looked at Yi Qing Luo tenderly. Since one is already dead, why don't we kill them all, Yi Qing Luo? Only Di San Sui would be jealous in such a Chinibya way in this world. This was called showing off his power in front of his love rival. Was he going to use his domineering aura to overwhelm his love rival? Yi Qing Luo gave Dmo Xian a stare, using her eyes to warn him not to be jealous before she opened her mouth. Yu Ming is not someone who can't see things clearly, furthermore. The underworld mirror which Yu Han mentioned, is in my hands. Back in the 21st century, she had taken the underworld mirror from Netherworld's hand and made it hers. Yu Han's plan was going to fail. Furthermore, although she had not spent much time with the Netherworld, but Yi Qing Luo more or less understood Yu Ming's character. She did not think that Netherworld would attack her in order to avenge Netherworld's death. Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Yu Ming, who was walking towards the cold, and retracted her line of sight. She pulled away Dmo Xian's long body, which was deliberately blocking in front of her, and looked behind Qiao Yin, at the unconscious Pei Xing. How is Ah Xing? Ever since Pei Xing's eruption had sent Pharaoh He flying, Qin Wentian's expression had changed. Pei Xing fainted. Fortunately, Qiao Yin reacted quickly and dragged Pei Xing to a safe place in time. Otherwise, Pei Xing would definitely have become the target of those dead puppets. Qiao Yin shook his head. He's not awake yet. Perhaps the sudden eruption of energy had exceeded the limits of his body and his body is unable to take it. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that it was because it had exceeded the limits of his body. Earlier Pei Xing's eruption. She also sensed it. On the contrary, she felt. Chapter 37:28. Yi Qing Luo expressed that they were still considered lucky. Dmo Xian rushed over in time. The pressing crisis had all been resolved. Pei Xing had profited from the misfortune and had the opportunity to advance. Azure Dragon and Shi Ju were fine. Now, they only needed to think of a way to break the auction's array, to let more people leave the auction, to stop the Palace of Darkness's plot. Yu Han looked at Yu Ming, who was nearing, as her eyes were filled with disdain. But the expression and tone on her face was filled with a trace of flattery and comfort. Yu Ming, pass Yu Nu's corpse to me first. After this matter is over, I will bury her at her favorite place. Saying that, he stretched out both hands towards Yu Ming, wanting to receive Yu Nu. But his hands had just stretched out. Suddenly, he felt a piercing pain in his chest. The smile on his face froze. Yu Ming, you. Yu Han's voice was hoarse, as she groaned in pain. He slowly lowered his head, only to see a hand, pressing against his left chest. That hand, half of it had already entered into his body. It was so easy to hold his heart. Blood gushed out, dyeing Yu Ming's black robe red. Yu Ming, what are you doing? Yu Ji also reacted, as he berated sternly. But looking at the expressionless Yu Ming, who was doing such a bloody scene, he didn't dare to step forward to stop him. His heart was being held tightly. This kind of pain was simply indescribable. Yuhan's painful face turned pale, as her eyes widened, filled with doubt and puzzlement. Yuming met Yuhan's questioning gaze indifferently, as he said word by word, "What you said is right, I should take revenge for Yu. The person who forced Yu to her death, is you." Saying that, he grinned again, as he laughed lowly. That insincere smile, and that treacherous laughter. It was like a combination of lunatics. Yuhan only felt goosebumps all over, as she was extremely terrified. Yu loves you so much, she's dead, how can you live on alone? I can't let Yu stay in this icy cold hell, alone. He was still laughing. But the words that came out of his mouth, made one's hair stand. No, I don't want. Bam! The last word, death, Yuhan didn't manage to say it out. The 5 fingers on his heart suddenly tightened. His heart was crushed. Blood splattered. His stiff body was mercilessly thrown aside. Yuming slowly lowered his hand. Blood was flowing from his fingers. He looked down at the woman in his arms and chuckled softly, "I'm sorry, I can't bear to let you walk the Yellow Springs road alone. I know you don't want me to accompany you, so I'll send your most beloved to accompany you." "Yuming, are you crazy?" Yuji looked at Yuming in disbelief. The netherworld hand was bleeding. His expressionless face made it seem as if he was not the one who had crushed Yuhan's heart. Yuji felt that in the next instant, it was very likely that he would come and pinch his heart. When Yuming raised his head and stared straight at him, Yuming's eyes were fixed on him. Yuji subconsciously took a few steps back. Didn't you want to avenge Yu? Yu was killed by Yiqing Luo. Yu's death was so painful, and it's all because of Yiqing Luo. Yuji's eyes were filled with panic as he hurriedly opened his mouth. However, Yuming continued to stare at him. His gaze was as if he was looking at a dead thing. In the 5 underworlds, it was undeniable that Yuming's ability was the strongest. But it was because Yuming's eyes were different from ordinary people, and his innate talent was the strongest. Chapter 37-29. They and Yuming hadn't met each other for so many years. Yuji felt that he had matured a lot. But when facing Yuming, he still had an instinctive fear in his heart. I'm taking revenge for her." Yuming looked straight at Yuji as his voice was calm. Yuji took another step back. "Are you mistaken about the target of your revenge?" Yuming laughed. "Yiqing Luo is someone who keeps her promises. Earlier, if you had agreed to her request, Yu wouldn't have died." You're insane." When Yuji heard Yuming's explanation, he was so infuriated that his face turned pale and instantly turned steely green. "If we let them go, the Overlord will not let us off. In the end, we still have to die. So, you'd better go and die." Yuming totally didn't listen to Yuji's explanation. As though he had lost Yu, he had lost the intention to live. "Anyway, the 3 of you have always been together. On the road to the netherworld, walk together." Yuji stared at Yuming, knowing that Yuming's current situation could be said to be beyond cure. His eyes sunk and his figure suddenly leapt towards the direction of the black-robed man, hiding his figure in the crowd. Immediately after, he commanded sternly, "Speed up, you must complete the mission." The black-robed man let out a beast-like howl as he roared and charged towards those various powerhouses cultivators. Yuming only sneered as he looked towards the direction of Yuji and those black-robed men, his lips curled into a sinister smile. Immediately after, he turned around and carried Yu towards Yiqing Luo. Along the way, the blood on his fingers dripped all the way. He looked even more like a lunatic than old Lai. Qiao Yinyan, executive elder, and the others subconsciously tensed up their emotions as they stared at him vigilantly. Until Yuming's footsteps stopped 5 steps away from Yiqing Luo. Compared to the tensed emotions of the people around him, Yiqing Luo's expression looked much more relaxed and calm. Yu Ming stared at Yiqing Luo for some time as he frowned. You seem certain that I won't stand on their side. Indeed. Yiqing Luo didn't deny it. You're not an idiot. Moreover, you understand their temperament better than anyone else. Netherworld pursed his lips, and a ripple appeared in his calm eyes. But I actually hate you in my heart. I know. Yiqing Luo smiled, but I don't mind. After all, she was the one who killed the ghost girl. Regardless of the reason, he, who loved Nethergirl, definitely wanted to avenge her. Yu Ming's eyes became dark and gloomy, and his face became slightly hazy. I really want to kill you. Yiqing Luo scoffed, saying such words to me in front of my man. Do you really want to go down and accompany your beloved woman? Yu Ming took a look at Dmo Xian and kept his mouth shut with a black face. Towards Yu Ming's hatred, Yiqing Luo expressed her understanding. She was also certain that Netherworld would absolutely not make a move against her for now. Rather than hating her, the Netherworld should hate the Palace of Darkness and that so-called Venerable Moor. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. You intend to hug her corpse and fight with your life on the line against the secluded palace. Take out the nether mirror, Yu Ming said calmly. Yiqing Luo laughed. The nether mirror is mine now. Are you trying to snatch it back? Borrow, use. Yu Ming's words seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Yiqing Luo was satisfied as she threw the nether mirror to Yu Ming. She had already signed the blood pact with the nether mirror. So she wasn't worried that Yu Ming had a way to snatch the nether mirror back. Chapter 37:30. But he totally didn't bother about it. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. As expected, he couldn't be bothered to care for something that didn't belong to him. That bloodied hand was afraid of dirtying Ghost Maiden, so he didn't even dare to touch her. When he held on to the underworld mirror, he couldn't care less. Ha, men! Yiqing Luo ridiculed in her heart. But her eyes were fixated on Yu Ming's actions. There were many functions of the underworld mirror that she didn't understand. It was not practical to ask Yu Ming about it. She could only rely on herself to explore and learn secretly. Yu Ming held the underworld mirror and stared at Ghost Maiden for a long time, as though he wanted to imprint Ghost Maiden's face firmly in his mind. After a moment of silence, his fingers suddenly clenched the underworld mirror tightly as he shut his eyes tightly. The underworld mirror was aimed at Ghost Maiden. A white light flashed. Ghost Maiden's figure disappeared into Yu Ming's arms. Yu Ming held the underworld mirror tightly as he stared at the smooth mirror. His brows were filled with pain and struggle. He slowly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo. Before the battle ends, can you leave the underworld mirror with me? Although she didn't see clearly what Yu Ming did, but she could roughly guess. Yu Ming borrowed the power of the underworld mirror to temporarily preserve Ghost Maiden's corpse. Yiqing Luo didn't understand and couldn't understand why Yu Ming was so dead set on Yu Nu. But as a woman who was addicted to dating the Overlord, she understood Yu Ming very well. Alright, but this counts as you owe me a favor, so you can only use the array entrance to open the auction to repay this favor. Yiqing Luo agreed straightforwardly. Yu Ming took a look at her and shifted his gaze away, not replying to her. Apparently, he didn't want to bother with her. Yiqing Luo didn't pursue for an answer. Anyway, if Yu Ming couldn't do it, he would always owe her a favor. Qiao Yinyan stared at Yu Ming and sized him up for a long time before asking in a low voice, "Can this person be trusted?" He could tell that the relationship between Yu Ming and the secluded palace wasn't ordinary. Yiqing Luo nodded. Temporarily we can trust him, but we still have to be careful. Elder A was slightly worried. Since we can't be sure of his safety, why help him? What if he attacks us while we're not paying attention? Not for the time being. Yiqing Luo was originally too lazy to explain, but under the current situation, she needed to appease them. She thought for a while and explained the reason in a simple manner. He has a deep grudge against the Palace of Darkness and was once a member of the Palace of Darkness. He is very powerful. If he can help us temporarily, it will be a great help. Most importantly, he might have a way to break this formation. Executive Elder A's expression was very complicated, but he did not continue to ask. Let's hold off the monster's attacks for now. We're losing more and more people. Yiqing Luo changed the topic. In the auction, various powerhouses elites will suffer losses, and this will have a huge impact on their powerhouses. After the matter ends, there is a possibility that they will blame the losses on the auction. Her gaze swept past the executive elder and the Linglong Palace's hall master, who had a dark expression on his face. The few of you may have to bear full responsibility. Everyone's faces turned pale in an instant. Yiqing Luo had already said so. They didn't dare to waste any more time. The more they lost, it was even more disadvantageous for them. The entire auction was filled with profound radiance as various kinds of techniques filled the sky. The people around them had already joined the battle. Yiqing Luo patted Dmo Xian's hand, which was placed on her waist, claws. Chapter 37-31. Yiqing Luo expressed that she couldn't see the man's grievances. She walked past Dmo Xian and walked slowly to Pei Xing's side. The surrounding battle was too intense. If Qiao Yinyan kept paying attention to Pei Xing, it would affect his battle power. But if she ignored Pei Xing, the people from Gloomy Palace would definitely think of ways to deal with Pei Xing again. After all, they were very clear. They could use Pei Xing to threaten her. Yiqing Luo took Pei Xing's pulse and confirmed that he was fine. She thought for a moment and said to Yuming, use the underworld mirror to keep Pei Xing in. Yuming frowned. Ghost girl is inside. Separate. She wouldn't let Pei Xing lie together with a corpse, especially that corpse was a lady. If Gu Zixi found out about this, wouldn't she be filled with jealousy? Yuming's brows creased even tighter as he remained silent for a moment before he unwillingly walked over with the underworld mirror. The few people beside him stared at Yuming with vigilance. Yuming didn't mind as he walked to Yiqing Luo's side. Move aside. Yiqing Luo obeyed as she stood up and moved aside. Yuming pointed the underworld mirror towards Pei Xing. A flash of white light suddenly flickered. But the truth didn't look like what Yiqing Luo had seen when Ghost Girl's body disappeared. Pei Xing, who was lying on the ground, didn't disappear. Instead, he moved. First his fingers shook. Immediately following that, his body started to move slowly. Yuming took a step back with the underworld mirror and his expression congealed as he looked at Pei Xing in astonishment. Who is this friend of yours? He can actually counter the power of the underworld mirror. Counter the power of the underworld mirror. Yiqing Luo was shocked. His consciousness refused to enter the underworld mirror. Yuming kept the underworld mirror. This is my first time encountering such a situation. Your friend is very powerful. You mean? Brother Pei's ability is very powerful. Qiao Yinyan seemed to doubt his own ears when he heard that. Yuming took a look at Qiao Yinyan and replied calmly, yes. Generally speaking, there aren't many who can resist the power of the underworld mirror, even she. Yuming pointed at Yiqing Luo and continued, I'm afraid she can't resist the power of the underworld mirror. Qiao Yinyan's expression was complicated. Ah, Xing is indeed extraordinary. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. Earlier when he was restrained by Pharaoh, the power which he exploded out was extremely strong. Yiqing Luo half squatted down and was about to stretch out her hand to take Pei Xing's pulse. But just as he stretched out his hand, a large palm suddenly grabbed her wrist. That palm was extremely powerful. Yiqing Luo's wrist was in pain. In the next instant, Pei Xing's body suddenly straightened. His eyes were tightly shut as he faced Yi Qing Luo, emitting a kind of powerful aura which was about to erupt like a volcano. Yi Qing Luo frowned and was about to open her mouth. The man who was facing him suddenly opened his eyes. It was a pair of golden eyes. That's right, gold. Although it was not pure gold. There was also a hint of dark gold. But when Pei Xing's eyes met with Yi Qing Luo's heart was still shaken. Those eyes, why did she look so familiar? Why do I feel like I've seen him somewhere before? Brother Pei. Qiao Yinyan's voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. Qiao Yinyan was already squatting in between him and Pei Xing as he stretched out his hand and placed it on Pei Xing's hand. You're hurting all Luo. Pei Xing's hand was still holding on to Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly. The force had no intention of lessening. Yi Qing Luo was just about to say that it was all right. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Her feet left the ground as she fell into a warm embrace. Chapter 37-32. Xian. Yi Qing Luo's arms immediately encircled the man's neck. The man clasped her waist tightly and looked at Pei Xing and Qiao Yinyan in an unfriendly manner. It's all right, Xing just woke up and his mind isn't clear. Yi Qing Luo comforted him with a smile as her little hand caressed the man's face and used her fingers to wipe away his smile. Dmo Xian's expression was still gloomy. Yi Qing Luo felt that this time round, Di San Sui's vinegar jar was getting more and more sour. Not only sour, it was developing towards 2 years old. Yi Qing Luo changed the topic. Xian, have you realized that Xing's eyes seem rather familiar, as if I have seen it somewhere before? You seem to be especially concerned about that kid called Pei Xing. Dmo Xian lowered his eyelids as his peach blossom eyes locked onto Yi Qing Luo. His slightly lowered voice was obviously oppressive. Yi Qing Luo. Alright, this change of topic made Di San Sui even more jealous. At this moment, a frivolous voice came from behind. Overlord, you will easily lose Qing Luo in this way. Following that, Yi Qing Luo saw Zhou Mo hugging Kitty Li as he walked towards them. Behind them was an expressionless ghost martial artist. When the three of them walked over and even staged a mime, when Kitty Li saw Yi Qing Luo, her pair of animated eyes lit up. She wanted to rush over. But she was hugged tightly by Zhou Mo. Kitty Li turned her head and stared at Zhou Mo with her claws and fangs bared. However, Zhou Mo patted her head and whispered something into her ear. This caused Kitty Li's cheeks to turn red. After that, she nestled in Zhou Mo's arms and stopped struggling. This scene unknowingly stuffed a mouthful of dog food into Yi Qing Luo's mouth. Yi Qing Luo expressed her heartache. Her Kitty Li had really been taken over by a fox. How long had it been? Kitty Li was subdued by the fox. After the mime ended, the three of them approached Yi Qing Luo and the rest. Zhou Mo Xian raised his brows at Dmo Xian as he squinted his bewitching phoenix eyes and sloppily continued the topic earlier. Men, your possessiveness cannot be too strong. Qing Luo has her own rights to make friends and is Qing Luo's man. How can you put on that attitude towards her friends? You still have to learn from this young master what is called a man's way of life. Dmo Xian abruptly shifted his gaze as he stared at Zhou Mo with an icy cold gaze. His eyes were surging with billowing waves. A chill ran down Zhou Mo's spine, and he tucked his tail between his legs. But his mouth was still unwilling to admit defeat as he raised his eyes towards Yi Qing Luo. Qing Luo, do you think what I said is right or not? Yi Qing Luo. Why did he bring the topic back to her again? This was a suicidal question. Yi Qing Luo was just about to open her mouth. But she met Dmo Xian's serious and solemn gaze. From Dmo Xian's eyes, she could tell. Dmo Xian was also asking her, was Zhou Mo right? Yiqing Luo, taking a deep breath, she pursed her pink lips and looked at Zhou Mo with a smile. Enunciating each word, she asked, I just like it when my man gets jealous and cares about my looks. I spoil and spoil him. So what? Jealous? Following that, her gaze shifted downwards as she looked at Kitty Lee and her smile became even sweeter. Kitty Lee, since young Master Mo wants to learn a man's way of life, then you should follow what he said and tell him, what is called a man's real way of life. Zhou Mo's face turned pale in an instant. Before he could even hug Kitty Lee tightly. Chapter 37-33. Kitty Lee looked at him righteously and said, you said it yourself. You can't be too possessive. A kitty has the right to make friends. Kitty wanted to be with her beloved big sister. If you really love cats, then you should satisfy them. Zhou Mo. Damn it. Lifting a rock only to smash one's own foot. So it hurts so much. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Ha, isn't it fun to be mischievous? Are you still naughty? Kitty Lee leaned in front of Yiqing Luo as her big eyes blinked, looking at Dmo Xian who was like a stone statue, standing motionless by the side. After that, it looked at Yiqing Luo adorably, Sister, Cat misses you so much. As he spoke, he opened his arms, looking like he was asking for a hug. Success made Dmo Xian's face darken. Yiqing Luo didn't miss the crafty smile in Kitty Lee's eyes. Good job. How long had her cute and innocent little kitten spent with Zhou Mo, that sly fox? Did she become a little naughty cat? She even dared to tease her brother-in-law, the overlord, however, even if Yiqing Luo's heart was cursingly Mao's transformation. But looking at Kitty Lee's cute little face, Yiqing Luo pushed her man away without any hesitation and turned around to embrace Kitty Lee's petite body into her arms. Well, it's been a long time. Just to satisfy his willful little sister's bad taste. While satisfying Kitty Lee, Yiqing Luo also paid attention to her man's emotions. After hugging Kitty Lee for a while, she let go of Kitty Lee and whispered, be good. Then, she coughed lightly, let's think of a way to break this formation first, then we'll find a place to reminisce. The eviline energy in the surroundings is getting denser and denser. If this goes on, the profound practitioners of the various powers might be affected by the eviline energy. Kitty Lee acted coquettishly, unwilling to leave Yiqing Luo. However, she was still dragged back into Zhou Mo's arms. Yiqing Luo smiled like a flower as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist again, her chin resting on his chest as she beamed. Ah, Xian is so incredible, there must be a way, right? It was just a smile. One took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. The gloomy expression on the man's face brightened up. Ah, Luo. Qiao Yinyan waited for Yiqing Luo to finish her conversation with her old friend before calling out. Yiqing Luo looked over. Qiao Yinyan raised his chin in Pei Xing's direction. Brother Pei seems a little off. I don't know what's going on. I tried talking to him, but he didn't respond. As soon as Pei Xing woke up, his reaction of grabbing her arm was indeed very strange. Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian along as they neared Pei Xing. Pei Xing sat on the ground. His body was stiff and he sat up straight. His arm was still bent in the same position as when he was grabbing her wrist. Even those golden eyes remained the same as before. What was going on? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she pulled Dmo Xian to a half-squat position. She tentatively reached out to Pei Xing. He waved it in front of Pei Xing and called out softly, "Ah Xing." The eyelashes of the man who was stunned on the spot trembled. Suddenly, he shifted his line of sight towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo. Didn't we agree? Why didn't he respond? Qiao Yinyan. He was also very shocked. Could it be that Brother Pei despised him, so he didn't give him any response? Dmo Xian. Give you a look, feel it yourself. Pei Xing stared at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. Under the dim golden pupils, Yi Qing Luo's face was reflected. Chapter 37-34. Yi Qing Luo didn't know what kind of expression she should use to express her inner *ck feelings at this moment. Brother Pei, it's easy for people to misunderstand you. Think about your little sister Zixi. Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the low pressure coming from the man beside her. Yi Qing Luo felt her throat itching again. She coughed a few times and looked at Pei Xing calmly. How are you? I don't know. Pei Xing raised his arms, his eyes filled with confusion. I feel that my body is different from before. It's as if I have inexhaustible strength. He blinked his golden eyes and said, there seems to be a voice in my head, urging me to fight to my heart's content. Yi Qing Luo stared at Pei Xing's face for a long time. Then he said, oh. He glanced at the battlefield not far away and said, go, fight. Pei Xing clenched his fists and felt the power in his body. However, his eyes were still filled with confusion and uncertainty. Can I really do it? You have to believe in your own strength. Yi Qing Luo withstood the enormous pressure as she patted Pei Xing's shoulder. Don't tell me you don't want to leave this place, don't want to return to the treasures exchange hall, don't want to stay by Zixi's side and watch her wake up. No one knew if he had mentioned Zhu Bao or Zixi's name. The perplexed man's eyes flickered a few times and became more resolute. Yi Qing Luo retracted her hand and continued, haven't I said this before? Zixi will either wake up today or tomorrow. If she knew that you were trapped in the auction's array, what would she do? If she forced her way into the auction in order to find you, you should know very well how dangerous it is inside. Pei Xing suddenly raised his head, his clenched fists seemed to be surrounded by a thin layer of profound light. Although it was not obvious. However, his aura was extremely strong. He looked at the battlefield. Blood dyed the ground. It was a brutal and ruthless scene. His eyes gradually became sharp. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian as she slowly stood up and gave him an encouraging smile, go on. An afterimage flashed before his eyes. The man's figure had already rushed into the battlefield. His speed was as fast as lightning. Pei Xing joined the battle. At first, he wasn't used to it. However, after swinging his fists and punching the black-robed men one by one, the black-robed men exploded. Gradually, he found the feeling. Moreover, he noticed that his attacks were different from the other profounders. The attacks of the other profound practitioners did not affect the black-robed man in the slightest. At most, he could only hinder the other party's movements. However, his attack and the profound strength that he released. He could completely suppress the black-robed man. Although it was not to the extent of destroying the other party. It could also make the black-robed man lose the ability to fight. Yi Qing Luo saw Pei Xing getting braver and braver as she retracted her vision. She felt like an old mother watching her son go to the battlefield. She sighed and stuffed herself into Dmo Xian's arms and said, did you hear that? He has other ladies in his heart and he treats me as his benefactor. Did I say anything? Dmo Xian raised his brows and asked. Yi Qing Luo. Indeed, he didn't say anything, but could you control your expression before asking back? Dmo Xian suddenly suppressed his voice as he gave a smile which didn't look like a smile but was filled with danger. You're in such a hurry to explain to me, looks like. You and him really. Yi Qing Luo directly raised her fist and pounded on her chest as she turned around and left. Go be jealous if you like, I'm not going to serve you anymore. Chapter 37-35. Humph. Don't think that she didn't know what he was thinking. Wasn't he intentionally finding trouble? Waiting for her to coax him. His ultimate motive was to let her use the way he wanted to satisfy him, to compensate him. Men. She had long seen through his little tricks. Coax him. Now come and coax her obediently. After Yiqing Luo charged into the battlefield, Azure Dragon and Shi Ju followed closely behind. After Azure Dragon charged into the battlefield, he let out an angry roar. Following that, he turned into a huge dragon body as his dragon's breath spewed out and his tail swayed. A bunch of black-robed men were smashed into pieces. The entire auction sky and the surrounding air was filled with a terrifying hurricane. In fact, the spirit formation barrier that enveloped the auction hall was trembling non-stop from the Azure Dragon's berserk power. Large tracts of air waves were like ripples on the surface of a lake, as it rippled in circles. The auction fell into a state of violent shaking. Even the ground began to crack like a spider's web, with countless fine cracks densely packed together. It showed that Azure Dragon was really infuriated. Shi Ju was Azure Dragon's reverse scale. Sir Yu, what should we do? Pharaoh he dodged left and right to avoid the flying broken stones as he looked at Yu, who had a gloomy expression as he asked anxiously. Yu stared at Azure Dragon viciously, without replying. But his expression and the tensed muscles on his body could be seen. His current emotions were already on the verge of exploding. They had obviously done all the preparations. They could totally wipe out this bunch of trash from the Earth domain. Yet, such an accident happened. Obviously. The Overlord couldn't possibly appear here. They specially separated the Overlord and Yiqing Luo, so that they could deal with Yiqing Luo alone. Obviously. Death God Castle's Castle Lord couldn't possibly appear here. But unfortunately, Zhu Wu Axayan appeared just like that, and he even stood on Yiqing Luo's side, in an absolutely protective manner. Full of confidence, he brought his corpse puppets to the auction to carry out a massacre. He had not expected that before it even started. Out of their 3 nether, 2 of them were dead. Now in the ghost hand's 5 nether, there were only him and Yuming left. But Yuming was obviously planning to betray the Palace of Darkness. It could be said that this mission. They had suffered a huge loss. If this went on, this mission might really fail. His eyes suddenly darkened. No. He absolutely could not fail. Those fools were not afraid of death. But he didn't want to die. Yuji narrowed his eyes as if he had made a decision. Then, he looked at Pharaoh Crane. Do you want to live? Pharaoh Crane nodded vigorously. Didn't they join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness to survive? Do you still remember the conditions of the deal between the Dark Organization and the Nether Palace? Yuji asked. Pharaoh his expression froze, and the muscles on his face twitched. Finally, he said, I remember. The Palace of Darkness will help us take revenge and reform the dark forces. They will also help us awaken the King of Darkness at his peak. He paused and said the next sentence with difficulty and reluctance. If the Palace of Darkness can do it, we, the dark forces, will all surrender to the leader of the Palace of Darkness and become a part of the Palace of Darkness. As long as you remember. Yuji pursed his lips. After this mission is completed, bring me to the King of Darkness's resting place. Pharaoh Crane's expression stiffened. So fast. Are you prepared to awaken the King of Darkness? Chapter 37-36. Pharaoh he quickly lowered his head. No, I wouldn't dare. Yuji gave a cold harumph. Yiqing Luo has too many helpers by her side. Palace of Secluded Darkness also needs to develop their helpers. Awakening the King of Darkness will give us an additional helping hand. After saying that, he made the final decision. It's decided. After we leave the auction, we will head to the King of Darkness's resting place. Pharaoh Crane was very nervous. However, when he saw Yuji's impatient expression, he nodded in the end. Yes. The Pharaoh of the Dark Forces who was once high and mighty. With a wave of his arm, tens of thousands of people responded. But now, he had to rely on others to survive. This was a great humiliation to Pharaoh He and the Dark Forces. It was not that Yuji did not notice the unwillingness in Pharaoh He's eyes. He just couldn't be bothered. Ever since the Dark Forces joined the Abyss Palace, the Dark Forces were just a tool to be used. Want to make a comeback? That was impossible. Yuji's eyes flashed past a glint of disdain, but the words he said were still in a normal conversational tone. Keep a close eye on the Overlord and Death God Castle Lord. Today's mission absolutely cannot fail. I'll go deal with Yiqing Luo and that dragon. You. Pharaoh Crane widened his eyes. Yiqing Luo and that dragon were hard to deal with. However, Dizun and Death God Castle's Castle Master were even more difficult to deal with. How could he keep an eye on her? However, Pharaoh he was not allowed to refuse. Yuji had already leaped up and charged in the direction of Azure Dragon. A dense evil aura emanated from his body. Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Yuji as her lips curled up, sneering as she flicked her fingers. The gourd flame fan that was originally aimed at the black-robed man suddenly closed. Shortly after, a mysterious light surrounded the glowing flame fan. The profound energy that soared to the sky was like a sharp blade, as it shot straight towards Yuji's face. When the evil Yin Qi collided with the bright red light, the air vibrated. The dark force collided. A huge burst of sparks exploded. Immediately after, a huge leopard's claw slammed down on his head. Yuji immediately dodged to the side. He was hit in the chest by the remaining power of the Xian light. He grunted and took 2 steps back. He clutched his chest as his sinister eyes, which were suffused with black qi, stared deadly at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows in ridicule. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be wrapped in frost, finally willing to make a move. I thought you were going to continue to be a coward. Yiqing Luo, you will regret saying this. Yuji's eyes turned cold as the black gas enveloped him completely. He suddenly let out a roar. The hand that was covering his chest suddenly exerted force and directly plunged into his own body. Blood gushed out and dyed his hand red. However, it was as if he couldn't feel the pain. The expression on his face contorted and became crazed. The corners of his mouth curled up into a horrifying sneer. What is he trying to do? Suicide. Yiqing Luo was stunned by Yuji's actions. Old Man Tsang said seriously, Little Luo, don't let your guard down. I think he's planning to use his own flesh and blood to cast some forbidden technique. Yiqing Luo. Another forbidden technique. Other than using sinister methods, couldn't the Dark Palace fight them head-on? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she looked straight at Yuji. Forbidden technique, right? A forbidden technique which has been interrupted, can it still be a forbidden technique? Her 5 fingers moved and the gourd flame fan turned into streaks of neighborhood light as it entangled towards Yuji from all directions, attempting to interrupt Yuji's thoughts. But just as her attack was about to get close to Yuji. Chapter 37:37. Bam! The profound light collided with the protective shield, causing the air to vibrate and shake violently. Yiqing Luo frowned and was about to attack further. Suddenly, a huge monster suddenly appeared in front of her. A huge roar with a fishy smell hit her in the face. Yiqing Luo even felt that the surrounding air had sunk into a burst of violent turbulence. She frowned, raised her hand and used the glower flame fan to block the incoming hurricane. What was going on? In front of her was a huge wave of profound chi. She couldn't see clearly what was happening in front of her. She could only hear the sound of cold air being sucked in, mixed with a few exclamations. Following that, there were terrified screams. As the fluctuation in front increased, the wave in front of her also dispersed in all directions. Yi Qing Luo could vaguely see a huge beast crawling on the ground. That beast was half a head taller than the auction building. Its huge body slightly swayed and brought along a hurricane, which could send people flying at any time. The beast raised its head and roared. The sound was deep and deafening. Even the ground began to shake with that howl. That disgusting stench was emitted from the beast in front of her. What kind of monster was this? Was it the same as the fake white dragon's white fang, a corpse puppet? No. In his mind, Old Man Song very quickly gave a negative answer. That is the forbidden technique that this old man spoke of. Using one's own flesh and blood and strength to create dark beasts to fight alongside one's own. Dark attribute beast. Yi Qing Luo had never heard of this kind of beast and could only guess based on the surface. Could it be, this huge monster is a battle tool created by Yu Ji using his own flesh and blood? You can say that. Old Man Song said, this is completely different from a corpse puppet, because it belongs to the illusory category. That beast can cause huge damage to you, but your attack is like hitting the fog, it doesn't hurt or itch. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted, so exaggerated. It seems that the other party is determined to succeed in this operation. Old Man Song said solemnly, you have to be careful. During the conversation with Old Man Song, that huge beast had completely taken shape. As the beast raised its claws, it landed heavily on the ground. The surrounding hurricanes and flying sand were all swept away in all directions. In Yi Qing Luo's line of sight, there appeared a gigantic. She couldn't tell what kind of wild beast it was. It looked like a tiger, a lion, and a leopard. Everything was alike, yet nothing was alike at all. All in all, it could be summed up with one word, ugly. It was extremely ugly. She had seen countless species of magical beasts. It was his first time seeing such an ugly beast. However, no matter how ugly it was, it could not conceal the powerful aura emitted from the beast. It was awe-inspiring, as if it was above the 9 heavens. That arrogance, the momentum of looking down on the world. It was definitely not inferior to the 4 great saint beasts. Roar! That wild beast faced Yi Qing Luo and opened its mouth to let out a deafening roar. The air surged and the ground shook. Yi Qing Luo expressed, she did not feel the domineering aura of a wild beast's provocation. She only felt the thick breath of a wild beast. That roar came down. His mouth was filled with the stench of blood and stench. It was disgusting. Yi Qing Luo felt that her stomach was extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 37-38. Suddenly, a ray of green light flashed past her eyes. A sturdy shield appeared in front of her. Following that, the stench also dissipated. It was the green dragon. The green dragon coiled its body and blocked in front of her, blocking the beast's turbid air. It enveloped her completely under its protective shield. Roar! The beast roared ferociously as the powerful aura exploded from its body and gradually rose. Rumble! The surrounding buildings also collapsed under the roars of the wild beasts. Roar, roar, roar! The beast seemed to be afraid of the green dragon. After it realized that it was unable to attack Yi Qing Luo, it turned around and waved its claw towards the other side of the battlefield. A nearly 3 meters tall gigantic beast could cause the earth to quake and mountains to shake with just one claw. The ground cracked and collapsed. The violent force was like a tornado, sweeping up the crushed stones and soil on the ground, scattering in all directions. That overbearing power. It wiped out a group of cultivators in a matter of minutes. The crushed stones that splashed out entered the cultivators' bodies and took away their lives directly. Its power was so strong that it made one fearful. For a moment, the auction was filled with wails. When the cultivators from various powerhouses saw this beast, they thought of that white dragon monster which had been slashed. Apparently, this beast in front of them was much more powerful than that white dragon monster. They didn't even have a chance to retaliate. Were they really going to? Doom today. Everyone's mood instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. The atmosphere of despair filled the air. Roar, the beast was very satisfied with everyone's fear towards it. Accompanied by Yuji's cold laughter. The beast suddenly leaped up and flew into the sky. That huge body was extremely agile. With this leap, he jumped several zhang high into the air. The hurricane that was stirred up by his body carried the momentum of a tempestuous wave, and it forced the surrounding profound practitioners to fly backwards. Screams came from everyone's mouths. After the beast leaped up, it quickly rushed down in their direction. Heavens! Is this beast trying to crush us to death? Quick! Spread out! Help, help! The crowd watched as the beast's huge body fell like a huge meteorite. A majestic and thick dark force followed. The entire sky was filled with violent profound energy, like a tide, it was unstoppable. A single monster was enough to annihilate all the elites from the major forces. What kind of terrifying organization was this? Those profound practitioners who were sent flying didn't even have the chance to dodge. They could only look on helplessly as the huge beast charged towards them. Boom! Caw-caw! Caw-chaw! The huge explosion was deafening. A berserk power swept out. Even in the air, there seemed to be cracks appearing. The space trembled, and a surging wave of energy slammed into everything in the surroundings. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Fear and despair before death took over his entire heart. However, under this earth-shattering explosion of power, none of them felt their lives slipping away. The feeling of surviving made everyone feel both shocked and joyful. They widened their eyes and looked at the sky full of dark rays in confusion. Not far from them, the enormous monster smashed into the group of black-robed men. The ground caved in as a result of the monster's attack. A huge pit was created. Many black-robed men were smashed into pieces. What was going on? Wasn't that monster smashing them? Chapter 37-39. The next moment, the doubts in everyone's hearts were answered. In the deep pit where the monster had collapsed, a red figure suddenly appeared. The red-robed young lady had a devastatingly beautiful face, a pair of long and narrow eyes, as though the stars were ravaging. She was obviously dainty like a flower. But her cold and murderous aura made one's heart tremble. Like a beautiful death god who had walked out from hell. Like a poppy which made one suffocate, yet not daring to touch it. In that huge deep pit, the young lady's figure was extremely petite. When she leapt into the sky, a green light flashed and the green dragon spiraled, protecting the young lady in it. The green dragon's scales glowed brilliantly, giving off an extremely cold and chilling aura. Yuji, you only have this bit of ability. The girl's clear and cold voice carried an oppressive aura, mixed with a trace of obvious ridicule. When the crowd heard this, their hearts were in their throats. Did this lady know what she was saying? That monster was summoned by the people from the Palace of Darkness. She provoked the other party. If she angered that monster, what if it swallowed her in one mouthful? At this moment, in everyone's hearts, they had subconsciously placed their hopes on this young lady. They had totally forgotten. Not long ago, they were still suspecting her in every way. Perhaps it was because right now, everyone's hearts were already filled with despair. Only Yiqing Luo, this young lady, a newborn calf who wasn't afraid of the tiger, dared to hoot at the palace of darkness, and had such a noble war pet. So they tried to find hope in the midst of despair. They subconsciously felt that if they wanted to leave the auction alive, they could only rely on this young lady called Yiqing Luo. And because of that, hearing Yiqing Luo's provocation, everyone was so nervous that they were suffocating. As expected, Yu Ji was provoked. His face was pale, one hand was still pressed on his chest, tightly holding onto his flesh, allowing the blood to flow on his palm. He smiled sinisterly at Yiqing Luo, laughing coldly. Yiqing Luo, your luck will not last forever. So what if you have the green dragon? You will absolutely not be able to defeat my blood fang. Using my flesh and blood to construct the blood fang. Following Yu Ji's passionate low roar, the huge beast buried in the deep pit suddenly gave a loud roar. Immediately after, the ground began to shake violently. Beast slapped the ground hard. Its huge body instantly leaped out of the deep pit. A stream of black yin qi instantly wrapped around the wild beast. Yu Ji raised his head and stared at the wild beast. His hand, which was in his chest, went deeper into his chest. His face contorted in pain. However, the corner of his mouth was still hanging in a twisted arc. Blood fang, suck my heart's flesh and become stronger. Fresh blood stained Yu Ji's arm. Then, little by little, it dissipated on his skin. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel that the energy of the monster wrapped in yin qi had grown stronger. Damn it! A monster created from flesh and blood, as long as it continued to suck its master's blood, it would be able to recover and level up. You guessed correctly. Old Man Sang explained, this kind of forbidden technique is extremely cruel. If there's even the slightest bit of carelessness, the person who digs out the blood from their own heart will die from excessive blood loss or from the wrong position. Once the master dies, the monster will also disappear. Yiqing Luo looked at Yu Ji, then I'll just attack Yu Ji. Chapter 3740. Damn it! Did it need to be so difficult? Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly as her lips pursed tightly. No matter what. Killing this wild beast called Blood Fang was obviously an unrealistic thing. She could only think of a way to deal with Yu Ji. She gripped her glower flame fan tightly as her figure moved, nearing Yu Ji's direction. Yu Ji only sneered when he saw that. His gaze turned cold. Blood Fang, which was surrounded by black qi, turned into a bolt of lightning as it charged towards Yiqing Luo. That speed was even faster than Yiqing Luo by several times. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she quickened her footwork. The glower flame fan in her hand swiftly swept away the wind blades as it pressed towards Yu Ji. Azure Dragon twisted Blood Fang. Blood Fang was still able to find a gap to use his own body to block Yiqing Luo's attack. Following that, he turned around and pounced towards Azure Dragon. This kind of dark attributed wild beast will automatically block fatal attacks for the host. Old Man Sang continued, so I said right from the start that it's very difficult to get past the dark attributed wild beast and kill the host. Is there no other way? Yiqing Luo asked. Old Man Sang replied, no. Yiqing Luo frowned as she didn't ask any more questions, but focused on finding a chance to attack Yu Ji. Yiqing Luo's side was already in a battle. On the other side, the various powerhouses clenched their teeth as they started to join the battle between the black-robed men. At this moment, they could only choose to unite as one and fight with their backs against the wall. The terror of the opponent was something they had seen very clearly. If they didn't take advantage of the situation where Yiqing Luo was suppressing that monster to finish off these small fries, When Yiqing Luo couldn't hold on any longer, they would be in danger. Everyone started to fight, which made the executive elders heave a sigh of relief. Everyone started to join in the battle. Gue Wu, Zhou Mo, and Mao Mao joined in. The battle was much easier than before. Numerous attacks and dazzling profound energy filled the sky. The surging majestic energy was like surging waves as it surged continuously. Battle intent and killing intent intertwined in the air. But on the chaotic battlefield, there were two extremely abrupt presences. One red and one purple. Two men with outstanding temperament, as though they were aloof from the world, stood in the middle of the battlefield without any intention to make a move. Unfortunately, the two men's temperament was so powerful that it suppressed everyone from the secluded palace. It didn't matter if it was the people from the major forces or the palace of darkness. They would consciously avoid the two of them, not daring to get close to them. The biggest similarity between the two of them was, from the beginning until the end, his gaze had never left the young girl who was fighting Yu Ji and Shuya. It was as if, in his eyes, even in the entire world, there was only this girl. The dark light that filled the sky was sharp and murderous. The young girl moved quickly among the wild beasts. Her coordination with the azure dragon was reflected in the eyes of the two men. At this moment, suddenly, the beast roared. From his wide-open mouth, he spat out another ball of sticky stuff. When the sticky giant thing landed on the ground, it was covered in blood. It also let out a roar similar to blood fangs. This sudden change made Yiqing Luo stunned. The stench in the air was getting stronger and stronger. The stench was like the stench of a corpse that had been rotting for many years, and it also carried a thick stench of blood. Apart from the size of the beasts, they were almost identical in appearance. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart. How could he give birth from his mouth? And it gave birth so quickly. Opening his mouth and spitting out, he gave birth to a monster that looked exactly the same. One wild beast was already hard to deal with. And now there was a second one. Illusory wild beasts were willful, right? Chapter 37:41. Oh my God, that monster actually gave birth to a new monster. What's going on? Is that an illusion? Are we really going to die here? Everyone opened their eyes wide in disbelief after seeing Beast's godly performance. The confidence and fighting spirit that they had worked so hard to nurture. All of them were badly hurt. One monster was enough to wipe them out. Not to mention the addition of another one. This was not giving them a chance to live. Cough, cough. The Palace of Darkness said that as long as you join us, you can leave this place alive. While everyone was panicking, a voice panting heavily sounded, enunciating every word. Xiao Yulu walked out from the corner. She was still holding onto the wall, her face pale. Her white dress was stained red with blood. Her body was still trembling slightly. Obviously, her injuries were not light. She could walk out now. She had already used up all of her strength. Xiao Yulu gritted her teeth and endured the pain. She stared at the people on the battlefield with her dark eyes and spoke again. Join the Palace of Darkness. You have also seen the strength of the Dark Nether Palace. Their strength will let us see real hope. After she said this, she coughed hard. Mouthfuls of blood gushed out. Without embroiling city's fairy. Princess Yulu. Everyone was attracted by Xiao Yulu's voice and looked at her. After hearing Xiao Yulu's words, their expressions were no longer as resistant as before, instead, they loosened up. After seeing the power of the Palace of Darkness, those who wanted to live would naturally, no longer resist. Looking at the huge beast, the ground full of blood and corpses, Everyone's heart started to waver. With Xiao Yulu's help, Yuji seized the chance and said, "That's right. As long as you join the Palace of Darkness and become its disciples, I will guarantee your safety." I will join. Me too. Is what you're saying true? As long as we join, we can leave the auction. Then I will join too. More and more profound practitioners, driven by fear, chose to join the Palace of Darkness. There were also some who wanted to make a decision after leaving the auction. But, such little cleverness. How could the gloomy palace, which had always played dirty, not be on guard? As the profound practitioners who joined the Nether Palace walked towards the black-robed man according to Yuji's request, a ray of black light scattered across the sky like a fairy scattering flowers. Strings of black light flowed into the bodies of the various profound practitioners. The expressions of all the profound practitioners changed greatly, and they immediately covered their chests as they questioned in panic. Yuji's face was pale. Because one of his hands was still stuck in his chest, he looked extremely sinister and terrifying. He coldly swept his gaze across the panicking profound practitioners in front of him and sneered, "This is the mark of Dark Ghost Palace. After becoming a disciple of Dark Ghost Palace, you can only be loyal to Dark Ghost Palace. If you do anything that goes against Dark Ghost Palace's mark will devour your flesh and soul." What? What kind of bullsh *T mark is that? Aren't you making things difficult for me? I don't want this kind of mark. Quickly expel it from my body. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.